When a cocky luxury valet destroyed my late father's 1969 Mustang and laughed in my face, I thought I'd lost everything that mattered to a dead soldier's son. But the next morning, when 6 military vehicles rolled down my street with Colonel Morrison stepping out like an avenging angel, I realized my father had secrets that would change everything. What had he done in Kandahar that made the entire U.S. Army come to settle his son's score? The worst mistake of my life started with me trying to get a job at the fanciest hotel in town. I was broke, desperate, and driving my dead father's car to what might be my last chance at work. The red 1969 Mustang still smelled like his aftershave and cigarettes, even 3 months after the funeral. My name is Tommy Rodriguez, and I'm 34 years old. My dad, Marcus, died in Afghanistan when a bomb hit his truck. The Army gave me a folded flag and this car. That's all I had left of the man who raised me alone after Mom died when I was 12. Every scratch on the dashboard told a story. Every dent was a memory. The car wasn't worth much money, but it was worth everything to me. I pulled up to the Grandview Hotel on 5th Street. The building looked like a castle with gold doors and marble steps. Rich people in expensive clothes walked in and out like they owned the world. I felt small in my cheap suit and scuffed shoes. My hands were sweating as I gripped the steering wheel. This job interview was my last shot before I'd have to sell the Mustang just to pay rent. A young guy in a red vest walked up to my car. His name tag said Tyler. He looked about 25 with slick back hair and a smirk that made my skin crawl. He was chewing gum and looking at his phone instead of paying attention to me. "You here for the valet job?" he asked without looking up. "No, I have an interview inside for the night security position," I said, turning off the engine. Tyler finally looked at me and then at my car. His eyes lit up with interest, but not the good kind. It was the look a wolf gives a sheep. "Nice ride, old man," he said, walking around the Mustang like he was inspecting it. "They don't make them like this anymore." I got out and handed him the keys. My hands were shaking a little. "Please be careful with her," I said. "This car belonged to my father. He died serving our country, and it's all I have left of him." Tyler caught the keys with one hand and spun them around his finger like a toy. "Relax, Grandpa. I've been parking cars for 3 years. I know what I'm doing." Something about the way he said it made my chest tight. "I'm serious. This car means everything to me." My dad carved his initials in the dashboard. He taught me to drive in this car. When he shipped out to Afghanistan, he made me promise to take care of it. Tyler rolled his eyes. Yeah, military hero, I get it. Look, I park Ferraris and Lamborghinis every day. Your little muscle car is safe with me." But he wasn't listening. He was already climbing into the driver's seat, adjusting the mirrors, and revving the engine. The sound made my heart skip. Dad always said you could tell how someone felt about cars by how they treated the gas pedal. Tyler was treating it like a toy. "Wait," I called out, but he was already pulling away from the curb. I watched my father's car disappear around the corner of the hotel, and something cold settled in my stomach. The hotel lobby was huge with crystal lights hanging from the ceiling and flowers everywhere. I'd never been anywhere so fancy. The carpet was so thick my feet sank into it. Rich people sat in leather chairs, talking quietly and sipping drinks that probably cost more than I made in a day. I found a front desk and told them I was there for an interview. The woman behind the counter looked me up and down like I didn't belong there. She was right. I didn't. "Mr. Rodriguez, follow me, please." The interview was in a small office behind the lobby. The manager, Mrs. Patterson, was a kind woman in her 50s with gray hair and gentle eyes. She asked me about my work experience, which wasn't much. I'd been laid off from the factory 6 months ago. Before that, I worked construction until I hurt my back. I was honest about everything. "Why do you want to work nights?" she asked. "I need the job, ma'am. I've got a son, Jake. He's 16 and wants to go to college. His grades are good enough, but I can't afford it unless I find steady work." Mrs. Patterson smiled. "Your father was military?" "Yes, ma'am. Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez. He died 3 months ago in Afghanistan." Her face softened. "I'm sorry for your loss. My brother served in Vietnam. I know how hard it is." The interview went better than I expected. Mrs. Patterson seemed to like me. She said I'd hear back within a week, but she hinted that the job was probably mine if I wanted it. For the first time in months, I felt hope. I walked back through the lobby feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Maybe things were finally going to turn around. Maybe I could make Dad proud and give Jake the future he deserved. Maybe losing Dad didn't mean losing everything. But when I walked outside to get my car, my world fell apart. I should have known something was wrong when I saw Tyler standing next to the valet stand, smoking a cigarette and laughing with another guy in a red vest. They both looked guilty, like kids caught with their hands in the cookie jar. But nothing could have prepared me for what I saw when I looked around the parking lot. My father's Mustang was gone. In its place was a pile of twisted metal, shattered glass, and broken dreams. The front end was completely smashed. The hood was crumpled like paper. The windshield was spiderweb with cracks. One of the doors was hanging off its hinges like a broken wing. Steam was still rising from the engine, and there was a puddle of oil spreading across the pavement like blood. I ran to the wreck and fell to my knees. My hand was shaking as I touched what was left of the dashboard. There, barely visible through the damage, I could see where my father had carved for Tommy, drive safe, son, with his pocket knife on my 16th birthday. The letters were scratched and broken now, just like everything else. Dad, I whispered, and my voice cracked like I was 16 again. I heard footsteps behind me and turned to see Tyler walking over. He was still smoking his cigarette like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just destroyed the last piece of my father I had left. What happened? I asked, even though I could barely get the words out. Tyler shrugged. Had a little accident. No big deal. No big deal. I stood up so fast I got dizzy. This was my father's car. You promised you'd be careful. Hey, calm down, old man. Accidents happen. That's what insurance is for. But I could tell he was lying. There was something in his eyes, something that looked like guilt mixed with excitement. Like he'd enjoyed what happened. Tell me exactly what happened, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Tyler took a long drag from his cigarette and blew the smoke in my direction. I was moving your car to a better spot, you know? Sometimes we have to shuffle cars around when it gets busy. Well, I guess I hit the gas a little too hard. The thing just took off like a rocket. Before I knew it, I was sliding sideways into that telephone pole over there. He pointed to a bent pole about 50 feet away. There were skid marks on the pavement leading from the pole to where the car sat now. But something didn't add up. The skid marks were too long, too deliberate. This wasn't an accident. This was someone driving fast and reckless on purpose. You were joyriding, I said. It wasn't a question. Tyler's smirk got wider. Prove it, soldier boy. That's when I lost it. I grabbed him by his red vest and pulled him close. You destroyed my father's car. He died for this country, and this car was all I had left of him. Get your hands off me. Tyler pushed me away. It's just a stupid old car. Get over it. Just a stupid old car. Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to make him understand what he'd taken from me. But before I could do anything, a man in an expensive suit walked up to us. What's all the commotion out here? He asked. Tyler straightened up like a soldier. Nothing, Mr. Richardson. Just a little fender bender. So this was Richardson, the hotel owner I'd heard about. He was tall and thin with gray hair and cold blue eyes. Everything about him screamed money and power. He looked at me like I was something unpleasant he'd stepped in. And you are? He asked. Tommy Rodriguez. Your valet just destroyed my father's car. Richardson walked around the wreck, shaking his head. This is unfortunate. However, I'm afraid the hotel isn't responsible for accidents that occur during unauthorized use of guest vehicles. Unauthorized use? Your employee was supposed to park my car. Tyler informs me that he was moving your vehicle without permission when this happened. Since he was acting outside company policy, this becomes a matter between you and him personally. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He's your employee. He was working. You can't just wash your hands of this. Richardson pulled out his phone and started typing. I'm sorry, Mr. Rodriguez, but our insurance doesn't cover employee misconduct. You need to take this up with Tyler directly or through your own insurance company. Tyler was grinning now like he'd just won the lottery. Good luck getting money out of me, old man. I'm just a valet. I don't have two nickels to rub together. My legs felt weak. I sat down on the hotel steps and put my head in my hands. Jake's college fund, the house payment, everything depended on selling this car if I couldn't find work. Now it was gone, and nobody wanted to take responsibility. My father died in Afghanistan, I said, looking up at Richardson. He was a staff sergeant in the 82nd Airborne. This car was going to be my son's inheritance. Richardson's expression didn't change. I'm sorry for your loss, but that doesn't change the legal situation here. I pulled out my wallet and showed them my father's military ID, which I always carried. His serious face stared back at us from the plastic card. Doesn't this mean anything to you people? Tyler flicked his cigarette at my feet. Not really. Dead soldiers don't pay the bills. That's when I saw her. A woman standing by the hotel entrance, partially hidden in the shadows. She was Asian, maybe 40 years old, wearing jeans and a dark jacket. But what caught my attention was the camera in her hands. She was taking pictures of everything: the car, Tyler, Richardson, me sitting on the steps with my father's ID in my hand. Our eyes met for just a second, and she quickly looked away. But not before I saw something in her expression that I hadn't seen from anyone else that day. Sympathy, and something else. Something that looked like anger on my behalf. Richardson was already walking back toward the hotel. Tyler was lighting another cigarette. And I was sitting there with the ruins of my father's car, wondering what I was going to tell Jake when I got home. The woman with the camera disappeared before I could reach her, but she left something behind that would change everything. Tucked under my car's windshield wiper was a small piece of paper with just 4 words written in blue ink. I saw everything. Wait. I looked around the parking lot, but she was gone like a ghost. My hands were still shaking as I picked up pieces of my father's belongings from the wreckage. His sunglasses were broken in half. His favorite coffee mug, the one that said "World's Best Dad," was shattered into a dozen pieces. But the worst part was finding the little wooden cross he kept hanging from his rearview mirror. It was the same cross his mother had given him before he left for his first tour overseas. "You gonna clean this mess up, or what?" Tyler called out from across the parking lot. He was back to acting like nothing had happened, joking with his buddies and checking his phone. I ignored him and kept gathering what I could save. That's when I found something that made my blood run cold. In the glove compartment, which had popped open during the crash, I found my father's service records. But there were pages I'd never seen before. Papers with official stamps and signatures that looked important. One page had a list of names, and at the top it said Operation Nightfall, classified. I'd never heard my father mention any Operation Nightfall. He rarely talked about his time in Afghanistan, and when he did, it was always about the guys in his unit or funny stories about camp life. Never about specific missions or operations. "Hey, soldier boy." Tyler's voice cut through my thoughts. "You done crying over there? Some of us have real work to do." I folded the papers and put them in my jacket pocket. Something told me they were important, even if I didn't understand why yet. That's when Richardson came back outside with a clipboard and a security guard. The guard was a big guy with muscles and a mean look at his eyes. "Mr. Rodriguez," Richardson said in a voice that sounded like he was talking to a child, "I need you to sign this paper saying you won't hold the hotel responsible for what happened to your vehicle." "I'm not signing anything," I said, standing up from the wreckage. "Then I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to leave the property immediately." The security guard stepped forward. He was twice my size and looked like he enjoyed his job a little too much. "You heard him. Time to go. You can't just kick me out. That's my car." "Actually, I can," Richardson said with a cold smile. "This is private property, and you're disturbing our guests." I looked around and realized he was right. A small crowd had gathered to watch the drama. Rich people in expensive clothes were pointing and whispering. Some were even taking pictures with their phones. I felt like an animal in a zoo. "Fine," I said, "but this isn't over." "Oh, I think it is," Tyler called out. "Unless you've got money for a lawyer, which I'm guessing you don't." As I walked away from the hotel, my mind was racing. I had no car, no way to get home, and no idea how I was going to explain this to Jake. But worse than that, I had the feeling that Tyler and Richardson had done this before. The way they handled everything was too smooth, too practiced, like they had a system. I pulled out my phone to call a taxi, but I only had $12 in my wallet. Not enough to get home, which was 20 miles away. I was about to start walking when I heard a car horn behind me. A small blue Honda pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down, and I saw the woman who had been taking pictures. Up close, she looked tired but determined. She had kind eyes and shoulder-length black hair. "Get in," she said. "We need to talk." I don't even know who you are. My name is Sarah Chun, and I'm a reporter for the City Times. I've been investigating the Grand View Hotel for 6 months. My heart started beating faster. Investigating them for what? For exactly what just happened to you. Get in the car, Tommy. You're not the first veteran they've targeted, and you won't be the last unless we do something about it. I hesitated for a second. My father always taught me to be careful about strangers. But something about Sarah felt different. She had the same look in her eyes that my father got when he talked about doing the right thing, even when it was hard. I got in the car. Sarah drove to a small diner about 10 minutes from the hotel. The kind of place where working people ate lunch and the coffee was strong and cheap. We sat in a corner booth away from the other customers. How long has this been going on? I asked. Sarah opened a thick folder she'd brought from her car. Inside were dozens of photos, documents, and newspaper clippings. At least 2 years that I can prove. Maybe longer. She showed me photo after photo of destroyed cars. A pickup truck that belonged to a Marine. A motorcycle owned by a Navy veteran. An old Camaro that had been in Air Force family for 3 generations. All of them were wrecked the same way. All of them at the Grand View Hotel. They target military families on purpose, Sarah explained. Tyler looks for cars with military license plates or anything that shows the owner served. Then he takes them for joy rides and crashes them. The hotel claims it's not their fault, and the families have no way to fight back. But why? What do they get out of it? Sarah's face got hard. Tyler does it for fun. Richardson does it for revenge. Revenge? Against who? Against the military. His father made millions selling cheap equipment to the army during the Iraq War. Stuff that broke down and got soldiers killed. When the government found out, they shut down his business and sent him to prison. Richardson has hated military families ever since. I felt sick. So they destroy our stuff just because they can? That's not even the worst part, Sarah said, pulling out another folder. They've been taking photos and videos of the crashes. Tyler posts them on social media. They're making fun of veterans and their families online. She showed me Tyler's Instagram account. There were dozens of videos of him driving other people's cars recklessly. In one video, he was doing donuts in what looked like someone's grandfather's old truck. In another, he was racing down a city street in a car that clearly wasn't his. And in every video, he was laughing. The most recent video was from today. It showed Tyler driving my father's Mustang way too fast around the hotel parking lot. The video was titled "Taking This Dead Soldier's Ride for a Spin." I wanted to pull my fist through the phone screen. There's more, Sarah said quietly. I think Richardson has connections that go higher up than just the hotel business. Political connections. Maybe even military connections. That's why the police won't investigate. And that's why no lawyer will take these cases. She was right. I'd already tried calling 3 lawyers on my way to the diner. None of them wanted to hear about my case once I mentioned the Grand View Hotel. So what do we do? I asked. Sarah smiled for the first time since I'd met her. We call in backup. She pulled out a business card from her purse. It was plain white with just a phone number printed on it. No name, no company, nothing else. A source gave me this number 6 months ago. He said if I ever found a veteran who'd been wronged and had military family with the right connections, I should make this call. What kind of connections? The kind that don't like it when people mess with their own. I looked at the card and felt something I hadn't felt since my father died. Hope mixed with something dangerous. Something that felt like justice waiting to happen. What am I supposed to say when I call? Just tell them what happened. And make sure you mention your father's name and unit. Something tells me that's going to be very important. The phone call was supposed to happen the next morning, but I couldn't sleep that night, so I made it at sunrise from my kitchen table. My hand was shaking as I dialed the number Sarah had given me. I didn't know what to expect, but I definitely wasn't ready for what happened next. The phone rang twice before a deep voice answered. This is Colonel Morrison. Just hearing the word Colonel made me sit up straighter. My father had taught me to respect military rank, even over the phone. Sir, my name is Tommy Rodriguez. A reporter named Sarah Chun gave me your number. She said I should call if I had a problem involving military family. There was a long silence. Then, Rodriguez. What's your father's name, son? Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez, 82nd Airborne Division. He died 3 months ago in Afghanistan. Another silence, longer this time. I could hear papers rustling in the background. Marcus Rodriguez, the colonel said slowly. Tall guy, scar on his left hand from a knife fight in basic training. Loved to tell jokes, but never smiled when he was working. My mouth went dry. You knew my father? Son, your father saved my life. The room started spinning. In all the years Dad was in the Army, he never mentioned knowing any colonels. He talked about his sergeants and the guys in his squad, but never any high-ranking officers. I don't understand, sir. When did you meet my father? Afghanistan, 2019. Operation Nightfall. I was a captain then, leading a convoy that got hit by an IED. Your father's squad was supposed to be 20 miles away, but Marcus heard the radio chatter and disobeyed direct orders to come help us. Operation Nightfall, the same name I'd seen on the papers in my father's glove compartment. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. He pulled me out of a burning Humvee, Colonel Morrison continued. Took shrapnel in his shoulder doing it. If he hadn't shown up when he did, I'd be dead, along with 6 other soldiers. He never told me about any of this. That was Marcus. He never bragged about the important stuff. The colonel's voice got harder. Now tell me what happened to you, son, and don't leave out any details. So I told him everything. About the job interview, about Tyler destroying the car, about Richardson refusing to take responsibility, about the videos and the other veterans who'd been targeted. When I finished, there was complete silence on the other end of the line. Tyler Richardson, the colonel finally said. Would that be Tyler Richardson III? I think so, yes, sir. And his grandfather would be Richard Richardson Sr., the defense contractor who went to prison for selling faulty equipment to the Army. That's what the reporter told me. I heard the colonel typing on a computer. Tommy, I need you to listen very carefully. Don't go anywhere today. Don't leave your house. Don't talk to anyone else about this conversation. Can you do that? Yes, sir, but why? Because in about 4 hours, I'm going to make some phone calls that are going to change everything. Your father didn't just save my life, son. He saved the lives of 47 American soldiers that day. The Army doesn't forget debts like that. I still don't understand. You will. Tommy, what's your address? I gave him my address, and I heard him writing it down. One more question, the colonel said. Do you still have any of your father's military papers? Service records, maybe some documents that look official. I thought about the papers I'd found in the glove compartment. Yes, sir. I found some stuff in his car after the accident. There was something about Operation Nightfall. Good. Keep those papers safe. I'm going to need them. Colonel Morrison, what's going to happen? Justice, son. Your father's kind of justice. The line went dead, and I sat there staring at my phone. I felt like I just stepped into a movie, but I wasn't sure if it was a good movie or a scary one. The rest of the morning crawled by like molasses. I couldn't concentrate on anything. I kept looking out the window, expecting something to happen, but not knowing what. I called Jake at school to check on him, but I didn't tell him about the car yet. I wanted to wait until I knew what Colonel Morrison had planned. Around noon, my phone rang. It was Sarah Chun. Tommy, something's happening at the Grandview Hotel, she said, and she sounded excited. I've got contacts at the police station, and they just told me that federal agents showed up there an hour ago with search warrants. Federal agents? FBI. They're going through Richardson's office and confiscating computers. They arrested Tyler about 20 minutes ago. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How is that possible? You said the police wouldn't investigate. They wouldn't. But apparently, someone with a lot more power than the local police decided this case was worth their attention. I thought about Colonel Morrison and his promise to make phone calls. What kind of charges? I don't know yet, but my source says it's federal. That means it's serious. After I hung up with Sarah, I pulled out the papers I'd found in Dad's car. I spread them out on my kitchen table and really looked at them for the first time. Most of it was technical military stuff I didn't understand, but one page caught my attention. It was a list of names under the heading Operation Nightfall, personnel saved. There were 47 names on the list, just like Colonel Morrison had said. But what made my breath catch was a note at the bottom of the page, written in my father's handwriting. Sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the rules. I hope Tommy understands that someday. Dad had known this day might come. Somehow, he'd known that his actions in Afghanistan might matter to his family back home. He'd kept these papers as insurance. as proof of what he'd done and who he'd saved. I was still staring at the papers when I heard vehicles pulling up outside my house. Not just one vehicle, but several. The engines sounded big and powerful, like military trucks. I looked out my front window and felt my jaw drop. 6 military vehicles were parked in front of my little house. Humvees, a transport truck, and what looked like a command vehicle with antennas sticking out of it. Neighbors were coming out of their houses to stare. Kids were pointing and taking pictures with their phones. The door of the lead Humvee opened, and out stepped a man in a perfect military uniform. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with gray hair and the kind of posture that screamed authority. Even from inside my house, I could see the eagles on his collar that marked him as a colonel. Colonel Morrison had come to collect a debt, and he'd brought backup. Behind him, more soldiers got out of the other vehicles. Some were in dress uniforms, others in combat gear. I saw sergeants, lieutenants, and at least 2 other officers with enough ribbons on their chests to decorate a Christmas tree. These weren't just any soldiers. These were the kind of military personnel you saw in movies about special operations and important missions. Colonel Morrison walked up to my front door and knocked. Not the timid knock of a salesman or the harsh knock of someone angry. It was the confident knock of someone who knew he belonged wherever he was. I opened the door, and he snapped to attention and saluted me. Tommy Rodriguez, son of Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez, 82nd Airborne Division. Yes, sir. Colonel James Morrison, United States Army. I believe we have some business to discuss. What Colonel Morrison said next made my neighbors stop staring and start recording with their phones, but I barely noticed because his words hit me like lightning. Son, your father didn't just save my life in Afghanistan. He saved a convoy carrying the most important military intelligence of the entire war, and the people responsible for destroying his car just made the biggest mistake of their lives. I invited the colonel inside, but he shook his head. This conversation needs to happen where everyone can see it, he said loudly enough for my neighbors to hear. What happened to your father's car yesterday was not an accident, and it was not the first time. He gestured to the other soldiers, and they formed a semicircle around my front yard. I'd never seen anything like it. These weren't young recruits or weekend warriors. These were career military men and women with scars and serious faces. They looked like they'd seen real combat and weren't afraid of anything. Sir, I don't understand why you're here with so many people, I said. Colonel Morrison opened a thick folder and pulled out a photograph. It showed my father in his army uniform, standing next to a damaged Humvee in what looked like a desert. This photo was taken right after your father pulled me and 6 other soldiers out of that burning vehicle. What you don't know is what we were carrying. He handed me another photo, this one showing the inside of a military truck loaded with metal boxes and computer equipment. Intelligence data that helped us locate and capture the most wanted terrorist in Afghanistan. Information that saved thousands of American lives. My head was spinning. Dad never told me about any of this, because it was classified until yesterday. But when I heard what happened to his son, I made some calls. Big calls. The kind that wake up generals and politicians. One of the other soldiers stepped forward. She was a woman about my age with sergeant stripes on her sleeve and a nasty scar across her cheek. Sir, if I may, she said to the colonel. Then she looked at me. Your dad saved my life too. I was the medic in that convoy. When our truck got hit, I was trapped under twisted metal with a broken leg. Your father crawled into that wreck while it was still on fire and pulled me out. Another soldier nodded. He saved all of us. And what those people did to his car yesterday, that's not just an insult to your family. That's an insult to every soldier who ever wore the uniform. Colonel Morrison pulled out his phone and showed me a video. It was Tyler's Instagram post from yesterday, the one where he was driving my father's car recklessly around the parking lot. But now the video had thousands of comments, and they weren't the kind Tyler was expecting. This video has been shared on every military social media page in the country, the colonel said. Soldiers from all 50 states have seen what this punk did to a Gold Star family's car. They're not happy. I scrolled through the comments. Active duty soldiers, veterans, military families, all of them were furious. Some were posting their own stories about being mistreated because they served. Others were sharing photos of their own family members who died in combat. The anger was real and it was growing. But there's more, Colonel Morrison said, his voice getting harder. We did some digging on this Richardson family. Turns out the grandfather didn't just sell faulty equipment to the army. Some of that equipment ended up in your father's convoy. My blood went cold. What do you mean? The armor plating on your father's truck, the radio equipment they used to call for help, even the medical supplies that kept wounded soldiers alive until help arrived, all of it came from Richardson defense contractors. All of it was substandard garbage that should never have been sent to a war zone. I felt sick. Are you saying Richardson's family is responsible for Dad getting hurt? I'm saying there's a connection we're still investigating. But what I can tell you for sure is that Tyler Richardson's attack on your father's car was not random. He targeted you specifically because of your military connection. The female sergeant stepped forward again. Sir, we found something else. She handed the colonel a tablet computer. Richardson's hotel has been keeping a list. Colonel Morrison showed me the screen. It was a spreadsheet with dozens of names, all of them veterans or military families. Next to each name was information about their cars, their addresses, and notes about their financial situations. My name was on the list, along with my father's rank and unit information. They've been hunting military families like trophies, the colonel said, and Tyler Richardson has been posting videos of destroying veterans' property for sport. I was so angry I could barely speak. What can we do about it? Colonel Morrison smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a soldier who'd found his target. Son, your father's sacrifice saved 47 American lives. Those 47 soldiers went on to have families, careers, and lives because Marcus Rodriguez decided to do the right thing even when it was dangerous. He gestured to the soldiers around my yard. Some of those 47 people are standing right here. Others are stationed around the world. But every single one of them got a phone call this morning, and every single one of them wants to honor your father's memory. Another soldier, this one a grizzled sergeant with arms covered in tattoos, spoke up. Your dad was a hero, kid. Heroes don't get disrespected on our watch. Colonel Morrison checked his watch. In about 2 hours, we're going to pay a visit to the Grandview Hotel. We're going to have a conversation with Mr. Richardson and his employee about respect, responsibility, and what happens when you mess with military families. What kind of conversation? The legal kind. The FBI has already arrested Tyler on federal charges. Turns out destroying a veteran's property and posting videos about it online counts as a hate crime when you target people specifically because of their military service. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Tyler's been arrested this morning, along with his supervisor and 2 other hotel employees who were involved in the scheme. But Richardson Sr. is still walking free, and that's not acceptable. The colonel put his hand on my shoulder. Your father taught me something important that day in Afghanistan. He said that sometimes you have to stand up for what's right, even when it's scary, even when you're outnumbered, even when nobody else will help you. He looked around at all the soldiers in my yard. Well, son, you're not outnumbered today, and you're definitely not alone. My phone started ringing. It was Sarah Chun, the reporter. Tommy, she said, and she sounded excited. You need to turn on the news right now. This story is going national. I went inside and turned on my TV. Sure enough, there was a news report about the Grandview Hotel scandal. The reporter was standing outside the hotel, and I could see FBI agents carrying boxes of evidence out of the building. This developing story involves allegations of systematic targeting of military families by employees of the luxury Grandview Hotel, the reporter was saying. Sources tell us that federal investigators have uncovered evidence of a deliberate scheme to destroy veterans' property and mock their service online. The report showed Tyler's mugshot and several of his Instagram videos. Then it showed photos of destroyed cars belonging to other military families. Finally, it showed a picture of my father in his Army uniform. The case has attracted national attention after the son of a fallen soldier reached out to military contacts for help, the reporter continued. That soldier, Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez, was killed in action in Afghanistan after saving dozens of American lives in a classified operation. Colonel Morrison appeared on my TV screen, speaking to reporters outside the hotel. The United States Army takes care of its own, he said. When someone targets a military family for harassment and destruction of property, they're not just attacking one person. They're attacking all of us. I turned off the TV and looked out my window. More military vehicles were arriving. News trucks were pulling up across the street. My quiet neighborhood had turned into something that looked like a movie set. But the most amazing thing was the people. Veterans from all over the city were showing up at my house. Some were in uniform, others in civilian clothes, but all of them had the same look in their eyes that I'd seen in my father's photos from Afghanistan. They were ready for a fight, and they were on my side. The most unbelievable thing happened next. My 16-year-old son Jake came running down the street, still wearing his school backpack. But he wasn't alone, and what he told me about Richardson made everything we discovered look like child's play compared to the real truth. "Dad," Jake called out as he ran toward the house. Behind him were 3 of his classmates, all of them out of breath and excited. "Dad, you're not going to believe what we found." I was embarrassed that Jake was seeing all the military vehicles and news crews in front of our house. I wanted to tell him about the car accident myself, in private. But before I could say anything, he was talking to Colonel Morrison like they were old friends. "Are you the colonel who knew my grandpa?" Jake asked. "I am, son. Your grandfather was a hero." Jake's chest puffed out with pride. "I know. He always told me stories about helping people, but he never said he saved a colonel. Your grandfather saved a lot of people, Jake. More than you know." That's when Jake pulled out his laptop and opened it on the hood of one of the Humvees. "Colonel, you need to see this. We were doing research for a school project about local businesses, and we found some really weird stuff about the Richardson family." I looked over Jake's shoulder at his computer screen. He had spreadsheets and documents open that looked way too complicated for a high school project. "Jake, where did you get all this?" One of his friends, a skinny kid with thick glasses named Marcus, stepped forward. "Mr. Rodriguez, I'm really good with computers. When Jake told us what happened to your car, we decided to do some digging. We hacked into their system," another friend admitted. Colonel Morrison held up his hand. "Son, I need to stop you right there. Hacking is illegal, even when you're trying to help." "We didn't hack anything," Marcus said quickly. "Everything we found is public record. You just have to know where to look." Jake turned his laptop screen toward us. "Dad, the Richardson family has been doing this for way longer than anyone thought. Look at this." The screen showed a timeline going back 15 years. It started with Richardson defense contractors selling faulty equipment to the military. Then it showed Richardson Sr. going to prison. But what came next was shocking. After the grandfather went to jail, Jake explained the family started buying up businesses that military families use. Hotels near military bases, car dealerships that advertise to veterans, even some apartment complexes where military families live. Marcus pointed to another part of the screen. "And look at this pattern. In every business they own, there are reports of military families being treated badly, overcharged, discriminated against, or having their property damaged." I felt sick. They've been targeting military families for 15 years. "It gets worse," Jake's third friend, a girl named Amy, said quietly. "Showing the videos, Marcus." Marcus clicked on a folder, and dozens of video files appeared. They were all from Tyler's social media accounts, but going back years. Video after video of him destroying or damaging property belonging to veterans and military families. "He's been doing this since he was in high school," Amy said, and posting about it online like it was a game. Colonel Morrison's face was getting redder with each video we watched. In one, Tyler was keying the paint on a pickup truck with Marine Corps stickers. In another, he was throwing eggs at a house with a Gold Star family flag. In the most recent ones, he was driving other people's cars recklessly and bragging about teaching military losers a lesson. "There's more," Jake said, clicking on another folder. "We found financial records too." The screen showed bank statements and tax documents. I didn't understand most of it, but Colonel Morrison was reading over my shoulder, and I could hear him muttering under his breath. "What is it, Colonel?" I asked. "They've been claiming insurance money on all these accidents," he said. "Every time Tyler destroys someone's property, the family files an insurance claim. But the Richardson businesses also file claims for damage to their property. They're double dipping." "That's fraud," said the female sergeant who'd been listening to our conversation. "It's more than fraud," Colonel Morrison said grimly. "It's organized crime." Jake pulled up one more document that made my heart stop. It was an email from Richardson Sr. to his son, sent from prison 2 years ago. Make them pay for what they did to our family, the email read. Every soldier, every veteran, every military family you meet. They destroyed our business and put me in prison. Now it's our turn to destroy them. I looked around at all the soldiers gathered in my yard. These weren't just people who had served with my father. These were active duty military personnel, veterans from multiple wars, and military families from all over the state. Word was spreading through the military community like wildfire. How many families have they hurt? I asked. Marcus checked his computer. Based on what we found, at least 200 over the past 10 years. Maybe more. 200 military families. 200 veterans and their children who'd been targeted and attacked just because they'd served their country. Colonel Morrison pulled out his phone and made a call. General Hayes? It's Morrison. We got a bigger problem than we thought. Yes, sir, much bigger. I'm sending you files now. While the colonel was on the phone, more people kept arriving at my house. News crews from 3 different TV stations had set up cameras across the street. A group of bikers pulled up, all of them wearing leather jackets with military patches. Behind them came a convoy of pickup trucks, each one flying American flags and carrying veterans and their families. Sarah Chun, the reporter who'd first helped me, pushed through the crowd with her camera crew. Tommy, this story is exploding. CNN wants to interview you. Fox News is sending a crew. This is becoming the biggest military story of the year. I didn't want to be on national TV. I just wanted justice for my father's car and for Tyler to face consequences for what he'd done. But looking around at all the people who'd come to support me, I realized this had become something much bigger than my personal problem. Jake, I said, I need you to send all those files to Colonel Morrison right now. Already done, Dad. I sent them to the FBI too. Colonel Morrison finished his phone call and walked back over to us. His expression was serious but satisfied. Gentlemen, ladies, he announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. I just spoke with the commanding general of the Third Army. Based on the evidence these young people uncovered, the Department of Defense is launching a full investigation into the Richardson family's activities. A cheer went up from the crowd. People were clapping and shouting, but Colonel Morrison held up his hand for quiet. Furthermore, he continued, the FBI has issued arrest warrants for Richardson Sr. and 3 other family members. They're being charged with conspiracy, fraud, and hate crimes against military families. Another cheer, louder this time. But we're not done yet, the colonel said, and his voice got hard as steel. In 1 hour, we're going to the Grand View Hotel. We're going to have a conversation with anyone who's left, and we're going to make sure they understand that attacking military families is no longer acceptable in this city. I looked around at the crowd of supporters in my yard and filling the street. There had to be over 100 people now, all of them there because of what happened to my father's car. All of them angry about the systematic targeting of military families. For the first time since my father died, I felt like I wasn't alone in the world. I had an army of my own, and they were ready to fight for justice. Colonel Morrison put his hand on my shoulder again. Son, your father would be proud of what you've started here today. Not just for yourself, but for every military family that's been hurt by these people. Jake looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Dad, is this what Grandpa meant when he said, sometimes you have to fight for what's right? I thought about my father's words, about the papers I'd found in his car, about the way he'd risked everything to save Colonel Morrison and the other soldiers. Yeah, Jake, this is exactly what he meant. When we rolled up to the Grand View Hotel with over 50 military vehicles and 200 veterans, Richardson was waiting for us on the front steps with 3 lawyers and a smirk that disappeared the second he saw Colonel Morrison step out of the lead Humvee, wearing his full dress uniform and carrying a folder that would destroy everything Richardson thought he knew about power. The scene looked like something from a war movie. Military vehicles stretched down the entire block. Veterans in uniform and civilian clothes filled the sidewalks. News crews from every major network were recording everything. But what made Richardson's face go white wasn't the crowd. It was when he recognized Colonel Morrison. James Morrison, Richardson said, and his voice cracked a little. I should have known you'd show up eventually. Hello, Richard, Colonel Morrison replied. It's been a long time since your father's trial. I didn't understand what they were talking about, but the tension between them was thick enough to cut with a knife. These two men had history, and it wasn't good history. "Dad," Jake whispered next to me, "look at all the people." He was right. The crowd had grown even bigger than in my house. Veterans were still arriving from all over the state. I saw license plates from 3 different states. Word about what happened to my father's car had spread through the military community faster than anything I'd ever seen. One of Richardson's lawyers, a nervous-looking man in an expensive suit, stepped forward. "Colonel Morrison, my client is willing to discuss a reasonable settlement for Mr. Rodriguez's vehicle." Colonel Morrison laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "Settlement? Son, this stopped being about one car about 6 hours ago." He opened the folder he was carrying and pulled out a thick stack of papers. "Richard, do you remember what your father used to say about military families? How we were all suckers who deserved whatever we got." Richardson's face got red. "That's not what he said." "Really?" "Because I have recordings that say otherwise." Colonel Morrison nodded to one of his soldiers, who brought over a laptop and speakers. The sound that came out of those speakers made everyone in the crowd go quiet. It was a phone conversation between Richardson Sr. and his son, recorded while Richardson Sr. was in prison. "You need to make them pay, son," came the old man's voice. "Every soldier, every veteran, every military brat you can find. They put me in here, so you make their lives hell. Destroy their property, humiliate them, make them feel as powerless as they made me feel." "I've been doing that, Dad," came Richardson's voice from the recording. "Tyler's gotten really good at wrecking their cars. We've probably destroyed 100 vehicles in the past 5 years. Good. Make it 200. Make it 1,000. They deserve everything they get." The crowd erupted in angry shouts. Veterans were pushing forward, and for a moment I thought there might be violence. But Colonel Morrison held up his hand, and everyone went quiet again. "That recording was made 8 months ago," the colonel announced. "The FBI has been investigating the Richardson family since then. What happened to Tommy Rodriguez's car yesterday was just the final piece of evidence they needed." Richardson's lawyers were whispering frantically in his ear, but he pushed them away. "You can't prove anything," he said. "Tyler acted on his own." "Actually, we can prove everything," Colonel Morrison said. He pulled out another document. Bank records showing payments to Tyler for each car he destroyed. Insurance claims filed by your businesses for fake damages. Text messages between you and Tyler planning specific attacks on military families. Sarah Chun pushed through the crowd with her camera crew. "Mr. Richardson, how do you respond to allegations that your family has systematically targeted veterans and their families for over a decade?" Richardson tried to push past her, but the crowd of veterans blocked his path. He was surrounded, trapped on the steps of his own hotel, with nowhere to run. "This is harassment," he shouted. "I'm calling the police." "The police are already here," Colonel Morrison said, pointing to several police cars that had just arrived, along with FBI agents who have warrants for your arrest. 2 FBI agents in dark suits walked up the hotel steps. "Richard Richardson, Jr., you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, hate crimes against protected classes, and racketeering." As they put handcuffs on Richardson, he looked directly at me. "This is all your fault," he snarled. "You and your dead father. You people think you're heroes, but you're nothing but killers who couldn't make it in the real world." That's when something inside me snapped. I stepped forward, and Colonel Morrison put his hand on my arm. "Let me handle this, son," he said quietly. Colonel Morrison walked up to Richardson, who was now in handcuffs. "Richard, your father said the same thing about military families 15 years ago. Right before the government found out, he was selling armor plating made of recycled tin, cans to soldiers in Iraq." The crowd gasped. Even I didn't know it had been that bad. "You want to know why your father really went to prison?" Colonel Morrison continued. "It wasn't just fraud. It was because his cheap armor got 17 American soldiers killed. 17 sons and daughters, fathers and mothers, who died because your family cared more about profit than protecting the people who protect this country." Richardson's face went pale. That wasn't proven. It was proven in a classified military tribunal," Colonel Morrison said. 17 families got gold star flags because of your father's greed. And now you've spent 10 years attacking military families as revenge. He turned to address the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, The Richardson family has declared war on every person who ever wore the uniform of the United States military. Today, we declare that war over. They lose. The cheers were so loud, I could feel them in my chest. Veterans were hugging each other, crying, shouting. Some were taking pictures of Richardson in handcuffs. Others were calling their families to tell them the news. But Colonel Morrison wasn't done. He pulled out one more document, and this one made my heart race. "Tommy," he said, "there's something else your father left for you." He handed me a letter in my father's handwriting. My name was on the envelope, along with instructions, "Only open if Tommy ever needs help fighting for what's right." My hands were shaking as I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter from my dad, dated just 2 weeks before he deployed to Afghanistan for the last time. "Son," the letter began, "if you're reading this, it means something has happened to me, and you're facing a fight that seems too big to handle alone. Don't worry, you're not alone. The people I served with, the people I saved, the people whose lives I touched, they're your family now. They'll take care of you the way I would if I could." The letter went on to explain about Operation Nightfall, about the intelligence they'd recovered, about the lives he'd saved. But the last paragraph made tears run down my face. "Tommy, I need you to promise me something. If anyone ever tries to hurt you or Jake because of my military service, don't let them get away with it. Stand up. Fight back. Show them that Rodriguez men don't back down from bullies, no matter how rich or powerful they think they are. You have more friends than you know, son. You just have to ask for help." I looked up from the letter to see 200 veterans watching me, waiting to see what I would do next. Colonel Morrison was smiling. Jake was standing next to me with pride in his eyes. And Richardson was being loaded into an FBI van, his empire of hate finally crumbling. My father had been right. I wasn't alone. I had an army. 6 months later, I stood in my driveway next to the most beautiful 1969 Mustang I'd ever seen, identical to my father's car, but somehow perfect in every way, while Jake recorded me starting the engine for the first time. But what happened when that engine roared to life was something neither of us expected and would have made my father laugh until he cried. The Mustang was gorgeous. The paint job was flawless, deep red like my father's original car, but with a shine that made it look like it belonged in a car show. The interior was perfect black leather, and when I opened the hood, the engine looked like something from a museum. "Colonel Morrison really outdid himself," Jake said, walking around the car with his phone camera. "This is even nicer than Grandpa's original car." He was right. Colonel Morrison had arranged for military mechanics at 3 different Army bases to work on the restoration. They'd used the original engine block and transmission from Dad's wrecked car, but everything else was new or rebuilt to perfection. The Army had even paid for it all as part of what they called restoration of veteran family property damaged by criminal acts. "You ready to hear how she sounds?" I asked Jake. "Turn her on, Dad." I slid the key into the ignition and turned it. The engine didn't just start. It roared like a lion. But as soon as it did, the radio came on automatically, and what came out of the speakers made both of us freeze. It was my father's voice. "Hey, Tommy," came Dad's familiar laugh from the speakers. "If you're hearing this, it means the car got fixed, and you're probably wondering how your old man managed to record a message for you from beyond the grave." Jake and I looked at each other with our mouths hanging open. "Don't worry, son. I'm not a ghost," Dad's voice continued. "I recorded this message before my last deployment and hid it in the car's radio system. I figured if anything ever happened to the car, whoever fixed it might find this little surprise." I sat down hard in the driver's seat. Hearing my father's voice again was like getting punched in the chest and hugged at the same time. "I'm guessing if you're hearing this, something bad happened to me, and you had to fight some kind of battle to get the car back. That sounds about right. Rodriguez men always seem to find trouble, don't we?" Jake was crying and laughing at the same time. Grandpa knew this would happen. Dad's voice kept going. "Tommy, I need you to know something. Every day I was in Afghanistan, every mission I went on, every risk I took, it was all for you and Jake. I wanted to come home and teach you both how to change the oil in this car, how to replace the brake pads, how to make her purr like she's purring right now." The engine was still running, smooth and powerful. But if I didn't make it home, I wanted you to know that this car represents something important. It represents the idea that good people don't give up. When someone tries to hurt you or your family, you fight back. When someone tries to destroy what matters to you, you rebuild it better than it was before. I could hear noise in the background of the recording, other soldiers talking, helicopters, the sounds of a military base. Son, by the time you hear this message, you'll probably have learned some things about what I did over here. About the people I helped, the lives I saved, the friends I made. Those people are your friends now, too. They're Jake's friends. They're your family. A car door slammed behind us, and I turned to see Colonel Morrison walking up the driveway with a huge grin on his face. I was wondering when you'd find that, he said. Your father spent hours recording that message. He made me promise to make sure it got installed in the radio if anything ever happened to the car. You knew about this? Son, your father planned for everything. He even left instructions for how he wanted the car restored if it ever got damaged. Dad's voice was still coming from the speakers. Tommy, I need you to do something for me. I need you to take Jake for a drive in this car. Show him how she handles. Teach him to drive stick shift like I taught you. Tell him stories about our family, about what it means to be a Rodriguez man. I looked at Jake, who was wiping tears from his eyes. You want to learn to drive stick shift? Right now. We got in the car together, Jake in the passenger seat, me behind the wheel. Colonel Morrison stepped back as I put the car in reverse and backed out of the driveway. Where are we going, Dad? I don't know. Let's just drive. We drove through our neighborhood, past the school Jake attended, past the factory where I used to work, past the Grand View Hotel, which had been sold to a new owner who'd immediately fired all the remaining staff and donated money to veteran organizations. Dad's voice was still playing from the radio, but now he was telling stories about his childhood, about meeting my mother, about the day I was born, about his dreams for Jake's future. Tommy, came Dad's voice. There's one more thing I need to tell you. In the glove compartment, there's an envelope with Jake's name on it. It's for his 18th birthday, but if something happens and you think he needs to read it sooner, that's okay too. I pulled over and opened the glove compartment. Sure enough, there was an envelope with Jake's name written in Dad's handwriting. Should I open it now? Jake asked. It's up to you. Jake opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a letter in a small velvet box. Jake read the letter silently, tears streaming down his face. Then he opened the box. Inside was a ring, Dad's army ring, the one he'd worn every day since he enlisted. What does the letter say? I asked. Jake cleared his throat and read out loud. Jake, by the time you read this, you'll be old enough to understand what it means to be part of a military family. It means you're never alone. It means you have brothers and sisters all over the world who will help you if you need it. It means you come from a long line of people who stood up for what was right, even when it was scary. Jake put the ring on his finger. It was too big, but he didn't care. There's more, Jake said, and kept reading. This ring represents a promise to protect people who can't protect themselves, a promise to stand up to bullies and criminals, a promise to never forget that freedom isn't free and that some things are worth fighting for. We sat in the car for a long time, listening to Dad's voice tell stories and share memories. As the sun started to set, his message finally came to an end. Tommy, Jake, I love you both more than words can say. Take care of each other. Take care of this car. And remember, Rodriguez men don't give up. Ever. The radio went quiet, and we sat there in the silence for a moment. Dad, Jake said finally, yeah, I want to join the Army when I turn 18. I thought about everything that had happened over the past 6 months. The destroyed car, the investigation, the trial where Richardson and Tyler both got sentenced to federal prison. The hundreds of military families who'd come forward with their own stories of being targeted. The new laws that had been passed to protect veterans from discrimination. I thought about my father and the choice he'd made to risk his life to save Colonel Morrison and 46 other soldiers. I thought about the choice I'd made to fight back when someone tried to destroy his memory. And I realized that Jake was old enough to make his own choices about how to honor his grandfather's legacy. We'll talk about it when you're 18, I said. But Jake, yeah, Dad, your grandfather would be proud of the man you're becoming. I started the engine again, and we drove home through the gathering darkness, the Mustang purring like a satisfied cat, carrying us forward into whatever challenges lay ahead.